My name's Adele Onyango and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to this episode of Legally Clueless podcast. If you are an OG member, I've got nothing but love for you. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. Here's what you can expect in this episode.
Tell me why a whole adult can kick a 7-year-old boy, and not just a simple kick, it's a very heavy kick. I'm not proud to say this, but my dad has never paid my school fees even once. I later came to realize that he's my stepfather.
So that's Brian's story. It's coming up in a bit, but back to the newbies. Make sure you sign up to officially join our family. That's at legallycluelessafrica.com, and you'll be receiving newsletters from me. And while you're on our website, make sure you check out our video series and our tour series and listen to the over 270 podcast episodes if you're just discovering us. All right, let's jump into the 4 things I want to tell you before we jump into Brian's story, okay? Number 1, my voice is back. Yay! Okay, it's not like at 100, but it's at like 97, all right? Which is great. Which means this week, midweek teasers are back. I was kind of like holding off from giving you midweek teasers so that I could preserve my voice for the Monday episodes, but we're back. Number 2, group therapy this past weekend was powerful. In case you don't know, we do have recurring group therapy sessions. Last year we had about 200 people go through our group therapy sessions. This year we've just resumed them. It happened this past Saturday. The focus was on mother wounds. I learned so much, you know, as much as like I went there to be like, I'm here for work. I'm here to make sure everything runs smoothly for everybody. This does not apply to me. So much applied to me. And it was so great meeting everybody who came. I've got so much love for you. We had somebody come all the way from Turkana to attend. We had one guy, which is always great because this is primarily a space for African women. And I think the reason he came was what got me. He came so that he could better support his girlfriend who is navigating a mother wound. But while he was sitting there, he was like, you know what? Some of the things that you're saying, I'm beginning to find that perhaps I have a mother wound or a father wound, which is quite interesting. We had one of our youngest attendees ever, 18-year-old, and I was just so proud and inspired by her because at that age, I was not focused on my healing. I wish I was. But to see her doing that was just commendable. So 3rd thing I want to share is the next group therapy is going to be in August, and it's going to be focused on healing father wounds. That one, I feel like I need to attend, not to work, because my father wound is real. It's open. It's bleeding. It's just a mess. Okay. So if you are like me, make sure you stay listening or sign up for our newsletter so that once we make the announcement, you grab your ticket ASAP. In terms of our wellness talks, we're going to have another wellness talk at the end of July. Remember some time back when I told you of the doctor who helped me last year understand my breakdown when I got diagnosed with low functioning depression? I strong-armed her to come and talk to you. Yeah, so you can understand the link between your mental health and your physical health. And she's helped me so much. Oh my goodness, Dr. Sally. She's just like an angel on earth, to be very honest. I want her to do the same for you. So stay listening, sign up for our newsletter so that in July, you are at the wellness talk. All right, last thing I want to tell you before we jump into 100 African stories is, well, I'm not going to talk about protests per se in this episode, but in light of what's happening in Kenya, what I will say is please make sure you're taking some breaks. It's been a marathon of 2 weeks. Like I feel like exhausted physically, spiritually, mentally, everything, you know, it's just very easily can make you feel drained. But the fight for your country needs you to be strong. So disconnect if you must, right? Like log off all those platforms, the social media platforms, take some time off watching the news, disconnect, breathe when you can, go do something that brings you joy. For me, I was like reporting some of my plants. I spent some time in my flower garden. I was fixing my water tank just to kind of like get away from my phone. And I was with, a very special person. And they were telling me, you know what? Maybe you should disconnect because it's like the world or your country is not going to burn for the few hours you need to breathe, which is true. And when I did that, I came back strong enough to keep fighting Ruto. So do what you must, all right? Don't feel guilty in those moments. Do what you must because you have to do it so that you're strong. Let's jump into Brian's story, which, speaking of father wounds, has everything to do with his relationship with his father.
100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Brian. I come from a family, a very complex kind of one. It's one that people call the polygamous family. My dad has the first wife who has two children. They are older than me. One is around 35, and the other one is around 29. Yeah, one is an architect, the man, and then there's the girl, who is Christine. The man is called Fred. As I remember when I was a kid, my relationship with my parents was actually pretty good, as far as I can remember. My dad and I we were more friends when I was young. That's what I can remember. But as time went by, things started getting more of troublesome because out of nowhere, my dad started getting harsh with me. There's one instance that pains me a lot because I remember I was around 7 years old and my dad left his phone at home and he decided that he sends me because at that moment, my dad was at my mom's workplace. My mom at that time was a grocer. So my dad was at my mom's grocery and decided to send me home to get his phone and the charger. At that moment, I was wearing some sort of those jeans, those trousers that they call 3/4. They do not reach, they are between the toes and the knees. And there's that side pocket, like the ones on cargo pants. So I go home, I open the door, I took the phone, I took the charger, I put on that side pocket. And I decide to walk, I walk. I meet a group of friends. As a kid, we were so playful. So I decided, let me just play here a little. Then I'll go take the phone to my father. So at that moment, we played. And then decided, let me go, took the phone to my father. On reaching, I start patting myself, only to realize that I've lost the phone. I was so scared, and I was ready to be scared because what followed was so scary. I don't know, I cannot say it scared me, but it kind of did. Because tell me why a whole adult can kick a 7-year-old boy, and not just a simple kick, it's a very heavy kick. And not once, not twice, it was like along the way as we are heading back home, look, as we figure out if I've dropped it somewhere. And at that moment, I was so scared. It took my mom to save me at that moment because as we got out of my mother's grocery, my mother didn't follow us. So it was me and my dad until I think at some point it clicked on my mom's mind that this is not something that I can just sit here and wait because something might be going on. And she was right because she followed us and she realized that this guy has kicked me, has beaten me like a thug. Mind you, I'm a kid. Yes, I made a mistake, but it does not warrant me being kicked that way, okay? Later in life, I came to realize that wasn't the only case because I kind of had suppressed memories. Because at some point, my mother came and told me that there are many things that have happened. And she said, "Tell me, do you remember this and this?" And one specific case is one that is also scary because I was younger than 3 years old. I remember my mom. As I've said, she was a grocer then. She used to go to the market early in the morning at around 4 in the morning so that she can go pick the produce so that she can take them to the grocery and sell during the day. So she used to leave me with my dad. But Later, as time went by, I realized that my mom was taking me to the market with her at 3, at 4 in the morning. We were going with her. And she came to tell me the reason. The reason was that my dad was kind of mistreating me when I was that young. Mind you, I can remember the days where I was with my dad. We were happy, and I was younger than 3 years old. Yes, but I could remember. But I can't remember this bit because it's suppressed. Here's what was happening. So my mom told me that one time she was being told by the neighbor that my dad would wake up at around that time after my mother has left and start scolding me. I'm less than 3 years old. Why would this call such a kid? She didn't believe, but she said she'll see what to do. So one morning she decides, I've been told this story one time and again. Let me go and investigate. So she wakes up in the morning, opens the door, pretends that she's going to the market first. Then after like 20 minutes, she comes back to the door and starts monitoring. Then she told me that she heard my dad was scolding me, like telling me some very harsh words. As a kid, you're less than 3 years old. You do not understand what is going on. You are terrified. I guess that's why that memory is very, very suppressed. And at the moment she heard whatever was going on, at that moment she opened the door, didn't utter even a single word, carried me, put me on her back, and decided to go with me to the market. Do you know, like, a kid deserves sleep, right? But it was more safe me waking up with my mother early in the morning at 4, going to the market, than me staying in that house and sleeping. So we were living in the same place where they live, Wilson. I usually say that my parents live in Langata. Yeah. So we've always lived in Langata. And the market is Marikiti, the one in town. Yeah, just as you're heading to Gikomba Market. Yeah, so as life went by, I came to realize that me and my dad, we can never get along because he wasn't doing anything to make me feel comfortable around him. Imagine your own dad finding ways to saying you've done a mistake while you haven't. Like I can remember one time, my own father decided to tell my mother that. So here's how it went. So I wake up in the morning, when I was at the age of between 13 and 14, yeah. My dad had a water selling business within his garage. Like he used to wake me up early in the morning to go and open the business, and he'll come later at around 9, and while I've woken up at around 7 to go and open the business. We do not live that far away from the workplace, the garage. So I used to wake up early in the morning, go open the business. So on this particular day, I wake up, he calls me into his room, he tells me, take this key, do this and this. He gives me a list of things I must do before he comes. And on the bedside table, I see there's this 300 bob. Like, the relevance of that 300 bob will come in later. So I go open the business. I sell some water, jerry cans. I give some directions to some of the craftsmen at the garage. And he comes, he leaves me. I go on to do my own things. So he didn't tell me what happened. So he calls my mother and tells her, your son has taken my money. Tell him to give it back to me. So my mother doesn't call me at that moment. She waits until, because I used to go and take my lunch at my mother's place. At this time, my mother has left the grocery business. She has a hotel, the one that people normally call a kibandaski. I go there at around 2 to take my lunch. My mother calls me aside and tells me that mbona uliiba hiyo pesa babako, and I'm like, in English that translates to, why have you stolen your father's money? And I'm like, what money? And she's like, there was a 300 bob just beside the bed. And I was like, I did not take that money. So I decided that I'm not even going back home. I'll just hang around my mother's business. So in the evening, I help with my mother's duties. Then we close the business and we go back home. At that time, my dad hasn't come back home. So I go to my parents' bedroom and I show them And I show my mom, like, this is the 300 bob that you're saying I've stolen. And my mother became very angry because she actually noticed that bad tendency of me being put, like, being given mistakes that I haven't done and stuff. So she was very angry and she confronted my dad. My dad even didn't say sorry and say, like, oh, Pole, sorry, I did not see the money. He just kept quiet. And that was just one of the many faults that weren't mine. Another thing that he did that was so worrying, he used to make me feel so isolated. You know, as a kid, you're supposed to play, you're supposed to meet different kinds of people, explore some things. It helps in building our day-to-day lives, our character, like even our morals. So he used to tell me, like, do not dare go outside. There's this thing that our people usually say that once you, like, in Kiswahili they say kukazia mtu, it's like making a person's life very hard. The person decides to be a bit of rebellious. So I used to not hit to those words. So one time I brought a group of friends home. Actually, I can say the name. One was Obed and the one was he had a very weird name. More of unique, not weird. His name was Shang. I didn't used to have many friends near our home place. Most of my friends were near my mom's workplace. On this particular day, I decided to have them over at my place so that you can at least watch a movie, because sometimes you can't watch a movie and enjoy it alone. So we were enjoying the day. Then my dad comes. At that moment, he was just so friendly to my friends. And he was like, yeah, he did. He came and did whatever he wanted to do and left. Then in the evening, after my friends have left, I'm still watching my own things. He comes home and starts scolding me. Like, what was I supposed to do? Like, these are my friends. He even told me, like, he should not even dare indulge with them ever again. And I was like, yeah, what am I supposed to do? But I was so scared because it was actually a very strict and furious kind of person. From that memory of being kicked, it always felt like the way the people say it, bring PTSD. So, like, if you remember such a scenario, it's better off to at least follow whatever he's saying so that you do not ever get to experience that again. And thank God I never got to be kicked again. But at least when it comes to my mother's side, it was actually very, very nice, because those friends of mine where my mother used to work, at least my mom was accommodating to them. So at least, in as much as my dad was keeping me isolated here, at least my mother was at least keeping it in balance so that it does not escalate and affect how my life will have been in the future. Another one I can share is the role of a parent is to make their child's life at least bearable and a bit easy. I'm not proud to say this, but my dad has never paid my school fees even once. I started school at baby class, then transcended to pre-unit, then to nursery school. That was I studied in Rewa Nursery and Primary School. When I was ascending to class 1, I switched to another school, which was in South B. It was called Komboni Primary School, where I studied from class 1 to class 5, the first and second term. But at that moment, I decided that I want to switch schools because I did not feel like I was getting much from that school, which was right, because my grades weren't that good at that moment. So class 5 third term, I decided that I'm transferring. So I went to an interview to another school in Makueni. I had to go back to class 4. So third term, I was in class 4. So I was very much repeating class 5. That school in Makueni is where I did my KCPE. I got a good mark. And I went to a very prestigious national school where I got a pretty good grade, which made me get into university, where I did my media-related course. And currently, I am working in TV production. As I was saying, my dad has never paid my school fees. He was more, for a person who was so much authoritative around my life, to not pay my fees, it doesn't add up, because, as you can recall, earlier I said that I used to work for him. It's like, I will label that child labor, because I'm working and I'm not getting anything from it. During the opening of schools, mostly when I was in boarding school, primary school, they'll just call me aside and give me something like 200 bob. What is 200 bob going to do? Like, I'm in boarding school. Like, there are a lot of things required. There are books required. There's shopping required. There is fees required. There are uniforms required. And you decide that you want to give me 200 bob. 200 bob isn't going to do anything. But back in primary school, the school fees wasn't that much. That's okay. Let's get to high school. High school, during the registration day, a lot is required. But during that time, he was nowhere to be seen. Like, we can track back to 2 months before I get to high school. So, we're required to have a birth certificate. If you do not have access to money that can help you get to high school, you can apply to the a project, so that at least you can get that funding to go to school. Like, I've even made a mistake. Let me track back even more. In class 7, that is when we were registering for KCP, right? You're required to have a birth certificate, and at that time I did not have one. So my mom decides that he talks to my dad so that we can find a way to get the birth certificate. My mother decides to call my dad. My dad is nowhere to be seen. And the moment where he comes back, he gets mad because my mother has gotten the birth certificate. Why is he mad? Because his name is not there to be seen. All I know is in my birth certificate, if you can see it, it's only my mother's name. There's no father. And my father gets angry. And my mother put across a question and asked, where were you when you were required to do this and this? We were in a rush. Like, it's not that it's not like we had the time. We had like 2 months to go so that we can register for KCSE, or else I'd be left out. And he gets angry. So after she put across that question, my dad just kept quiet. I've done my KCP, I've passed, and I've gotten the calling letter to a very good school. So again, we are required to apply that wings to fly, because remember, first my mother was a grocer, then she decided to open the hotel. That kind of business cannot really pay that much money, more so in national schools. Yeah, since a lot is required, very, very much is required. So we decided that we are applying for wings to fly. A lot is required of my father. Where does he go? He goes missing. He went to up country to do his own things. My mom decided that she's so tired. So at that time I didn't know, but my mom took a very hefty loan so that I can go to school. At least my entry to school was free, because it required more than 80,000 just for the first term. There's uniform required, cutlery, more utensils, shirts, sets, the logbook, like a lot was required. So she decided to take that risk, which haunted her for a long time, till I'd say like 2 years ago. Those are 8 years. At that time, she had a lot of customers, because near her work, there's this institute called the Kenya Water Institute in South Sea. Most of the comrades who studied there used to go and eat at a place. And that's a lot of people. Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, there were no returns. Like, she didn't get much. And at some point, she came and told me that at some point, I decided to take a loan so that you can go to school and study. That wasn't the end of it all, because still, I had to apply for bursaries here and then. And mind you, my dad has a garage. A garage is trust me, it has a lot of money. Beside that, he has a water business. But where does that money go? It doesn't go to my school fees, it doesn't go to my shopping, nothing. So, hey, for the other siblings, it's funny because of the two, my stepbrother to my stepsister, there was also a problem when it came to my stepbrother. My stepbrother faced the same. The only person who got to enjoy was my stepsister. Whenever she called my dad answered. Whatever she needed was provided by my dad. Like, my dad's business has a lot of money. So why was I applying for bursaries? It didn't make sense to me. Why did my mom have to take a loan? It didn't make sense to me, because I have a father. But there's something that I learned later on, and I'll share it momentarily. So at that point, it didn't make sense to me. The story goes on to campus. At least campus, the money required wasn't that much. Like, high school, but there were challenges here and there because I lived outside the school. I required food, I required rent, I required learning materials. Once in a while, I would call my father and tell him that my mom does not have money and I do not have anything to eat. Send me money for shopping, and at least I'll find a way to survive. And you'd think that he'd send something like 1,000 bob for shopping, and he decides to send you 200 bob. 200 bob isn't enough for shopping. That is enough for a meal, one meal, or two, and it's over. And I'm supposed to survive with that for a week. I later came to realize that he is my stepfather. Yeah. That revelation came to me later. I thought that it's because he's my stepfather that he treated me that way. But I got a call back to when he treated my brother the same, my stepbrother the same. Because my stepbrother was called to Miranda High School, but he had to forfeit that position so that because there wasn't money. But as I said, my dad has a good business which has money. He was nowhere to be seen even in his case. So it took my uncle's intervention for my stepbrother to go to school also. So he was taken to another school, district level school. I do not know if that is how they classified them at that moment, but I would say it was a district school because that was what was affordable at that time. So and we still go on further. I've finished my campus. I've graduated. Before I graduated, my dad introduced me to somebody in the media sector and told me that if you want to get an internship position, I'll connect you to him. And at that time, I was like, maybe he's trying to get better, because at that moment we weren't living together. And then I'll have to backtrack again because when I was in Form 3, I went to school, and during the academic day, my dad came, and at some point, I decided to call my mom, and we talk. And my mom calls me, we talk, and she decides to reveal something to me. She says that I no longer live with your father. I decided to move out, and actually at that moment I was happy because we've been through a lot, me and my mother. So I was happy. During the holidays, at least I got to be happier because it was only me and my mother. There was no pressure from anyone. I didn't have to wake up to go work for somebody who does not provide for me. At least we did not even speak for 3 good years. Me and my dad, we never spoke for 3 years. From 2016 to 2019. Yeah, 2019 is when we first spoke. So after 2019, so we moved back to the story to the internship story. So I decided to call this guy, and he tells me like you send your CV and I'll give you a position. I did not get the position at that time, but at that moment I was like, yeah, at least my dad is changing for the better, because in our lives we actually we crave that paternal love and to have a father figure in our lives. Even though he's a stepfather, he's a father figure. I was like, yeah, he's changing for the better. And at some point, my mother decided to move back. That is back in 2020. My mother decides to move back. And at that moment, everything was bliss. Like he's trying very much to keep us close. Because at that moment, we were thinking that he learned from his past mistakes. He's trying to change for the better. So once in a while, I even started going to his house. So I started visiting home more and more times. Then let's move to when after I've graduated. After I've graduated, I was offered that internship position. I did that internship for like 3 months before I was employed. But before that, I remember, like I'm living alone. I'm paying rent. I'm supposed to feed myself. I'm supposed to have transport to go to work. It's an internship position. I'm not being paid. It was an unpaid internship. So one day, I was overwhelmed financially. So I called my dad and I tell him that I do not have transport to go to work. And he was like, okay. So I came to realize that later that caused problems, because he went and confronted my mother, and here's what my mother told me. Told me that my dad said this: kama hiyo kazi msaidisi atoke huko. that translates to, if that work isn't helping him, he should leave. And was like, why am I leaving this work to do what? How will I feed myself? This is an internship position. I do not have any means to feed myself. I do not have any means to get to work. If I leave this position, which might later graduate into some kind of employment, where will I find for myself? These experiences are so traumatizing because you'd think that he was changing, but he wasn't. He was just trying to get us close, then destroy us further. That is what I got from it. I realized that he wasn't my biological dad, but it wasn't from my mother. It wasn't a revelation from my mother. It was just a speculation from my own mind. But my mother revealed it to me when I was in high school. I think around when I was in Form 2. But that didn't negate the fact. That doesn't negate the fact that he was my father figure. He doesn't negate, because he's the father that I've seen since I was born. As far as I can remember, that is the father that I've known. And when it comes to my real father, I actually met him, but I think him and my stepfather were just cut from the same cloth, because they're just the same people. Here's the thing. At some point I thought that after I've stayed from my father a long time ago, I thought that maybe I've healed or anything, until I realized that I have a lot of pent-up anger within me, because at work my superior is just the same kind of person as my father, because being given faults that aren't yours, being shouted at. That's when I came to realize that I haven't really healed, because anytime my superior does the same thing, I get really, really, really angry and disoriented, that I can't really work well. And there are even more developments. I don't know if I should share this, but okay, I'll just share it. So this is recent, not much long ago, at around the end of last year. So my mom decides to, once in a while, she just ambushes me with some very disturbing news, because she says that I could tell you this because you are younger then. But last year, my mother told me that at some point, after she confronted my dad decided to kick her on the chest. And, I sought an advice from another mature person. And this is the advice that he gave me, Ati. Do not intervene on their matters because it's theirs. I don't know if that's the good advice, because you don't know, that is more of the plague that has been befalling this country, the gender-based violence. Yeah, because at some point I think I have always wanted to intervene, but such words are what hold me back, because what am I supposed to do? You see your mother in pain, and who's causing the pain? Your father. You have to confront it, but you're being told not to confront. I do not know whether these notions that are being placed around are really helping when it comes to helping women. So after learning that, I was very angry. I was actually like, should I come and she was like, you just leave it alone for the moment. But many a times I've advised my mother, like, one day just get that energy and courage and just move on with your life. There's more to life than whatever you're being put through. I do not know that if that's the correct advice to give my mother, but that's what I told her, and I think that is what is going to happen really soon, and I'm really happy. From these experiences that I'm talking about, like, you'll create a certain mentality that fathers are like that. So upon meeting my real father, I was like, I didn't feel much, because first of all, where was he? Like, he wasn't the father figure that was there. So he didn't much matter to me. Just the same way I did not matter to him back then when I was born. It's actually my mother who gave me the idea of just going to meet my little dad. He lives in Westland. So one day she decided that we'd go and see my dad. As I said, like, I didn't feel much of anything because he wasn't there, so I'm not going to be there for him too. Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's another thing. At some point this year, I went home and decided to sit down with my dad and we talk. Like, I wasn't going to talk about those past experiences. I went with this angle. So I went to him and told him, if I've ever done anything to you that warrants you being so angry at me, I'm really sorry. And I'd like us to be friends. I'd like us to be like friends. I'd love us to relate very well. I did that at least to bring peace in our life, because as I said, at some point we crave paternal guidance. But from after I did that, I was just observing the way he was taking in whatever I was talking about, and he wasn't taking that moment seriously. It was just his eyes were just glued on the TV, watching whatever he was watching, and I realized that this was just a lost cause. I've had confidence in my life. I've shared to them these experiences and where I've come from, my relationship with my father, and I always tell them this, that I've learned from these experiences, and I'd like to be a good father in the future. But at the same time, there's a question that pops up in my mind. With these emotional scars from my father, will I really be a good father, or will I just be the same like him? Because they say that these things it's like a cycle. It happens to you, and you decide to carry forward to your offsprings. It's something that worries me so much, because I've also had a friend tell me that she's also scared of being a mother because her mother treated her the same way I've been treated. What I'd like to say is, like, in this life, it doesn't cost you a thing to be nice. Most so parents, if you treat your kids badly, you do not know what kind of person you're trying to bring up, because these emotional wounds, you do not know how they affect them. As for me, I'd say that these emotional wounds are one of the causes of me being a very anxious person. I have anxiety issues here and there. These things have effects on people, and they're pretty long term, and it requires more of therapy and years of self-care to get to heal. As for me, I don't know if I've healed, but one day I would like to say that I'm proudly healed, and go to him and tell him that whatever you did to me does not hurt me anymore.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless.
I really enjoyed that story by Brian. I feel like we don't get a lot of African men opening up about anything that they're navigating. They're just not socialized to do that. Yet they are human, and it's a healthy thing to do. So whenever we have male guests on the show sharing with us, I always feel like so proud of them. It's quite a powerful story. I connected with when he talked about suppressed memories, because that's a real thing. The things that can happen to you in childhood that are just so vile that you forget them. And not only in childhood, like I've told you this before, even when it comes to like remembering the day my mom died, I have to have it written down in my notes because my mind erases it. It's so weird. But like your mind is so powerful. So powerful. I also connected with the whole part where his stepdad would blame his mom for certain things, or take out his frustrations of what was happening with the kids on the mom. And my dad would do that sometimes. And I've heard very many people say that their dads would do this, which is so terrible. Like you find that there's some dads, when the kid does something that is displeasing, all of a sudden, oh, that's your child. That's them speaking to the mom, right? But when the child does something, commendable, all of a sudden they're like, that's my child. And it's just, so terrible. So when he talks about that, I just remembered that my dad actually used to do that, and it was quite irritating. Another thing he talked about, which was quite interesting, because if you remember a few episodes ago when our resident therapist Faith was on and we were talking about navigating toxic workplaces, she talks about how your boss can trigger your unprocessed childhood trauma, because they can behave in ways that remind you of a particular parent or a guardian or a caretaker. And when he talks about it, I was like, oh my God, he's figured it out. That thing Faith was talking about, which I found so interesting, that childhood trauma can manifest in so many spaces, which is why our group therapies this year are going to be focusing on ensuring we heal, or even just begin healing from that. And the last thing he talked about that he was a bit conflicted on, and I was a bit conflicted on as well, is mothers confiding in kids. This came up during our group therapy session this past weekend because it's there's a boundary being violated there. When your mom is telling you things about what your dad is doing, it's kind of like parentifying you when in effect you are still the child. Maybe it's not fair. I'm not standing up for the dad or whatever, but like in whatever situation, maybe it's not fair for you to view your dad through your mother's lens. I don't know. But what I'm very sure about is that it's definitely a boundary being mirrored. That's what I think. I don't know what you think. What did you connect with in Brian's story? Please drop a comment on whatever platform you're listening to this on. I love reading your comments. Remember, if you want to share your story on this podcast, all you have to do is fill out our storyteller form. There's a link to it in the show notes. You then will get reached out to by one of our correspondents, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Some of the stories we record virtually. If you're African, you have a story, we want to hear it. If you are in the greater East African region, you can catch us on Trace FM every single Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m, Fridays at 1 p.m. All you have to do is go to traceradio.co.ke to stream. Can you tell I'm excited that my voice is back? I really missed talking. That episode where I couldn't talk to you, it was difficult. It was so difficult. But I'm back and I'm sending you tons of love and tons of grace. And once again, if you are in Kenya or helping us fight this fight that we're fighting in our country currently, do not be afraid to disconnect from time to time. Take some breaks so that you can come back stronger to continue with the hashtag and the fight that is Ruto must go.
That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.